Hey Mama, welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, wife, mama of 3, and doctor of the PhD kind. On this podcast, we talk honestly about high achievement, burnout, and what it looks like to lead well across home, work, and self. So if you're an ambitious mother scholar who's quietly exhausted by the pace you've been keeping and starting to realize that survival isn't the same as success, this podcast is for you. Mrs. Mummy PhD began during my own PhD journey as a wife and mama. Today, as a postdoctoral scholarly mama working across 2 leadership roles, this work has evolved. It's no longer just about finishing the PhD well, it's about creating sustainable ways of learning, leading, and living at any stage of your journey without losing yourself in the process. If you're ready to move from survival to restoration, you're in the right place. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Welcome back to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am delighted to have a very special guest with me today in the studio. I've got Dr. Janelle Chase-Mayers, and she is a creative and systemic therapist, master facilitator, and she's also a mama with a PhD. And I'm so excited to have her, not just because of all those lovely accolades, but mainly because we know each other. We know each other from secondary school in Barbados. And I know many of you listening to this podcast know how proud I am to be from Barbados. And this is the first time that I've had someone on my podcast from Barbados who's also a PhD mama, who's also a scholarly mama. I am so excited. So without further ado, I want to welcome you, Dr. J, to the show. Lovely to have you.
Thanks so much.
And would you like to introduce yourself to my lovely listeners?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mummy PhD. I absolutely love the name. I am Dr. J, a mental health consultant and founder and CEO of Re-Engineer Wellbeing, a Caribbean-based mental health training solutions company. And I'm excited to be here, but also excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, lovely. Let's get into it. So you have had a remarkable journey, and we'll talk about all of that in today's episode. But you've been an athlete, you are a therapist, you are a PhD scholar, and you navigated all of that while also navigating motherhood and grief as well. Mm-hmm. You are a widow, and we're going to talk about that in the episode. But to start us off, could you share how your experience as a mom has shaped your approach to scholarship and your career in general?
I love that question. I think one of the things that it really solidified for me was the importance of creating legacy and leaving legacy. I think what we undervalue in that when we are educated is that we can pass on information. We just happen to do it the PhD route. But I think anytime you're learning something or you're engaging something, there's an opportunity to share it with the people who you love the most, which is often your children or the people around you. So I think that's really why it's created this space for me.
That is incredible. And thinking about legacy and thinking about how that potentially impacted a lot of your journey, how do you think it's changed your approach to research specifically?
It's changed my approach to life. You know, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the document that talks about what a PhD means. And there's all of these other parts associated with being a PhD. Let me grab it because I think it's something really powerful to share with your listeners. But when I started the journey of doing my PhD, I didn't realize how much work it was. So it's the value of a PhD. What we think the value of a PhD is publication. And then it has a pie chart that says what the actual value is: writing, presenting, collaboration, data analysis, research skills, critical thinking, communication, problem solving, making an impact, data visualization, expert knowledge, time management, project management, ability to learn anything. And from the time I started to do my PhD, that visual literally was the visual that solidified.
My goodness, yes. Look at that.
That visual was the visual that solidified, like, listen, when you get a PhD, you're more than just your dissertation. Your PhD is evidence that you are doing well and evidence that you can do well in the spaces that you show up. It's not just what did I do my research on.
True.
That's but a small part. And I think a lot of people get stuck in, well, they're like, but you studied this. I'm like, yeah, I studied this because this is what my general interest was in the moment. But if you're a researcher, you are going to be studying different areas of it. So that has always driven me and on this journey and beyond.
It's so funny you said that. I was having a conversation with somebody just today, and she's in the middle of her PhD. And I was saying to her that, yes, when you're in the moment, you're caught up in all the writing and the deadlines and all of the things that you have to do to actually, complete the degree. But there is this kind of underlying growth that's happening in the background. And, the personal development part of that. And also you mentioned critical thinking, such a key skill to have in 2026.
Absolutely.
And, with AI and all of that, like just being able to have that questioning mind, being able to critically appraise, whatever it is that you're working on, I think is such a key skill. And so I'm really happy that you kind of highlighted all of those other elements of this journey. It's not just the publications, it's not just the doctor title. There's so much more that we gain from that experience.
Absolutely.
So I guess my other question to the flip side of that then would be, what did motherhood teach you that academia didn't or couldn't?
That's a good question. I think motherhood taught me that you're always going to learn and you're always a novice.
Yeah.
Academia doesn't teach you that. At some point in parenting, you're always going to be a novice.
I love that.
You're never going to pass that way. You're never going to start that way. You're never going to pass that way again. So yeah, that's definitely taught me that there's a novice, there's the novelty associated with being a mother.
Yeah, I love that, because it really kind of speaks to this thing that so many of us feel, imposter syndrome, and that comes from feeling like, you are expected to be an expert. Like, you've got a PhD, you should know your stuff. But actually, motherhood kind of grounds us in that kind of forever learning. Like, no 2 days are even the same, far less. So you're constantly learning, constantly, like you said, the novice. And I think that's really humbling. Yeah. And I think it's really, we should be constantly learning. We should be curious about life in general. And so I think you're right. Motherhood does kind of lend itself to that curiosity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your PhD focused on how health and wellness strategies improve family relationships.
Yeah.
But how did you apply those strategies to yourself as a scholarly mama?
Okay. So fun fact, when I first started my PhD, I wanted to study how couples stay together, how couples that train together, like this bad stay together. And subsequently the relationship broke up. So then I didn't study that anymore. And then I was like, let me think about it. And that's how I ended up with how movement, physical activity, and play influence with the interpersonal relationships of Caribbean mothers.
Yeah.
And I was studying about the mental health. And I think in the middle of COVID, so I started my PhD in 2015. And then I kind of stopped. I had picked the part of like, do I really need this? I think every person goes to this. I was like, do I really need to get a PhD? I actually was driven. It's such an interesting driven. Like, I remember saying like, I got my PhD before a certain person, because the person was in my field. And I was like, all this thing about, people listen to anybody who talks, but the real people who are out there doing the work, a lot of people don't listen to us because we're so busy doing the work. And like, my PhD was my homage to one of my very close friends who passed away in 2019. And so in 2020, I had stopped and I was getting back on the bandwagon, and then COVID came. And I was like,
gosh.
And then I was like, you know what? No, this is the perfect time because I can actually stop working because of what was happening, focus more on coaching. So I went from the therapeutic lens to starting a company and getting into more coaching. And then I decided to talk about that topic because that's what was different to me. But it would still be, movement and play, but not from a relationship standpoint, intimate partner. But it was more about women and children. And I felt like that was the story that I needed to tell because that was the area of my life that I was always also in as well too.
Were there moments where you feel like you had to apply all of that to your actual life? So to practice what you were preaching and learning about?
I always practice with, and I did. I am my walking billboard. It is not a show. It is not a put on. If I am not pouring into my own cup or filling in my own cup, you do not get what's well, there's nothing to promote. So so if it pour into me, you get what's in my overflow. I own a gym, so physical activity is something that's very important. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, I am also a widow, so with her. So I'm also mindful of how mental health and people impacts me and the strategies that need to be used. So I've never strayed away from what I believe and what I practice and what I do. It's all encompassing. It's such an integrated part of my life.
That's so powerful. And you mentioned grief.
Mhm.
And I know this is for a lot of people, it's a really difficult thing to even talk about, but grief has been a significant part of your story. You mentioned your friend that passed away, your husband also passed away, and you were navigating all of this in, with a PhD journey too. How did you navigate the emotional challenges of grief while maintaining the discipline needed for your kind of research and doctoral work?
So for me, I think the more frequent, the more familiar grief would have been losing my best friend Cindy. More than it would have been of losing my husband because I would have lost him in 2008. So and that was parenting grief because I would have lost him when my son was like 4 weeks old. So
Wow.
I had already, I would say I would have already done a lot of grief recovery work that would have helped me from that standpoint. But I think it was more Cindy's grief because I used her grief as catalyst and fuel to help me really tell the story of what the PhD had done was going to do because she had actually done a year at Harvard. She had actually
Wow.
done like the I think they do like an exchange where you can spend a year there and they take them to Dubai. Is that executive leadership course? And so she
Wow.
was really excited about it as she came back. And just a couple months into it, she had passed away. So I think it was really her grief and being a catalyst for change. And I
Yeah.
remember just sharing like when she passed away, just doing a note to her, like, I am going to be a voice. I am going to step up a lot more. And I think from when she died, I got a lot more vocal in what I do and talking more about what I do and how it can impact people and how we can shift the narrative. So that.
Wow. That's a lot. In those moments of grief, were there times where you had to give yourself permission to just experience that? And what permission did you have to give yourself?
Yeah, I think in group, you always have to give yourself permission. Like you have to give yourself permission to feel. You have to give yourself permission to stop. You have to give yourself permission to love. You have to give yourself permission
Yeah.
to think. You have to give yourself permission to pause. You have to give yourself permission to be honest. I think permission comes with grief. I don't think it's when I'm doing my grief work, when I have on my grief recovery specialist hat, I tell people, you could be an Academy Award winner and hope that people are watching you and recognizing
Yeah.
that you're acting. But for the most part, if you're a family award winner, people don't know that you're acting. And so if they see you moving along, like if everything is okay, they're going to shoot you if everything's okay. So for me, the permission is really to be in your authentic self in that space of truth. It is hard. But it's also something that every single one of us experiences. I'm not unique to it. I always tell people, people like, oh my gosh, you're sorry for your loss. People's husband died all the time. You just happen to know mine, or you just happen to know my story,
Yeah.
And so sometimes
Yeah.
we put things on pedestals that are everyday occurring. And because we're ill prepared to deal with loss, it can be overwhelming in moments that it doesn't need to be overwhelming. It just needs to be a lesson learned or an opportunity for you to feel. For me, my thing is always the permission to feel, because you are human. And if you've lost something or someone, like feeling sad or feeling hurt or feeling disappointed is part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is so true and so hard at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. But what would you say to the scholarly mama who is listening to this,
Mm-hmm.
who's carrying grief right now
Mm-hmm.
or loss in some way? What would you say to her?
Well, I think part of it is you have to determine how you want to utilize the grief, but I think you also have to determine whether or not you're ready to think after the grief. Because what a lot of people don't know is the grieving brain is not really equipped for studying. It changes, So if you are in active grief or you're acute grief, you're like, well, I can't think straight. That's because you're not hardwired to think straight when you are grieving. The brain is searching for patterns, and it's searching for familiar patterns that are no longer existing. So it takes about 6 months to a year for it to try to recalibrate. And that takes so much longer, especially when you're then putting yourself under physical strain. So my thing would be to decide, how are you utilizing the grief? And is this the correct time? I think what allowed me to navigate my personal story after my best friend passed away was that I had made a pact that my PhD was going to be the funnest time. Funnest is not a word, but we're coining it here.
Yeah.
I was going to have my best, living my best life while doing a PhD. And I really meant that. I literally meant that. I was
Yeah.
like, I was not going to be bogged down by it. If I had an assignment, I would do it, but I would still go out. And I remember how one professor, shout out to Dr. Amy Gwillet, that kind of humbled me, because I wrote
Mm.
an essay and she was like, listen, this essay with you right now, and this is going to tank your grade. You need to buckle up. And that particular day, I was like, dang, and I was like, I wrote a little bit, and then I was like, all right, if you just say I need to, let me check this out. I can't have that much fun to the point where I get in D's in the people class. So, because our mantra for my cohort was like, C's get degrees. That was our biggest, like, C's get degrees. Like, who really checks a PhD transcript? Right? Nobody. Right? Nobody's checking. Like, let me see if you get 10 C's. Like, nobody. So that was our mantra from the beginning. C's get degrees. Like, we good over here, right? So yeah, I think that was my impetus of just being able to navigate it. I had already made a
Yeah.
decision. So I would say for people out there who are grieving, you have to really make a definitive decision of how you're using this as fuel, because it can actually harm you. And maybe you
Yeah.
need to stop and deal with it and then come back. And I have a philosophical thought leadership when it comes to education, especially in the Caribbean. We educate our trauma. So we get smarter so we can feel better. And it often goes that way.
Yeah.
Because then you butt people who don't value what it is that you're doing. So you gotta make sure that
Yeah.
you're doing it for the right reasons. Or you're doing it for the reasons that can actually edify who you are as an individual.
Yeah, I think that's really a good point. And I think that then leads into this kind of like toxic productivity kind of narrative that
Yeah,
we just need to be constantly doing, constantly earning,
absolutely.
constantly
Yeah.
achieving. And I know your work emphasizes the connection between wellness and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your own wellness practices during your PhD and obviously post PhD too, but how did they sustain you during all these challenging times?
So I think when I started in 2015 to 2018, when I was just doing the course for yes, I did some learn. So it wasn't a case of, what strategies did I use. It was just the innocence of what knowledge that I had. My
Yeah.
PhD is actually in transformational know-how. And people ask, like, what do you do? Like, that's not the title of your degree, but that's what we're really looking at, transformational know-how in a creative way and creative systems, right? And the beauty of that is that I could do anything and it be useful. We had a course called absurdity, like, creative techniques, like after therapy, like I was doing courses that really asked you to stretch, which
Yeah.
was beautiful. And so while doing my coursework, I didn't need to create a strategy outside of what I was already doing. I owned a gym, so I was already working out. I was working at a drug rehab as a lead coordinator, so I was already in that critical thinking mind of leading organizational spaces. So it all fit. I think what was a lot more meaningful was COVID, because
Mm.
COVID really forced me to get creative when I wanted to continue doing my PhD. So I quit that job in 2017. I resigned from that job. So I was doing different things, but when COVID slowed down, it was really making the bigger pivot to move from therapeutic interventions to going coaching, also teaching people, and then eventually starting my re-engineering wellbeing company. So, the fitness, the meditation, having the right people around me. I always value those things and I continue to make those things part of my evening state, you know.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you said earlier, which is around practicing what you preach.
Yes.
It feels like you found a really nice way of blending all of these different parts of your story and your journey into something that's meaningful and impactful, but it actually feels true. It actually feels like this is actually your daily life. And so I think that's kind of important because, again, theory is great, but actually it's good to see when somebody's actually applying that same knowledge and the experience that they've had to their own life.
Yeah.
So you teach about emotional intelligence and you also help others to understand what's beneath the surface through the iceberg theory. During your PhD, were there moments where you had to apply that lens to yourself?
I don't know if I had to. I think because I was so steeped in being authentic that they, like, how do I say that? I think it was just an opportunity for me to finish what I had started because I had paused for like a year. And it was like, how do I make this meaningful now? Because the world is getting ready to shift. Because I could see, almost like I could smell that the world was getting ready to shift. Jobs that we had before were no longer going to be relevant. And so for me, I think it was always like I am really very authentic. It's hard. Like what you see here is what you get across the board, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I tell people just change my clothes. So I could be teaching, I could be in the gym, I could be meditating, it could be literally, I just change my clothes, but this is the version of me you're going to get in every single day.
Yeah. So that kind of self-awareness that you talk about and obviously applying that to your own life, did that cost you anything? Did that come at a cost?
That's a good question. I think authenticity always comes at a cost. I think the cost is whether or not what the cost is, and what it will buy you, or what it what you won't be able to afford. But it always comes at a cost. I don't know if it comes at the cost of losing people, because I'm always been selective about who I have in my life. So if the person is shedding, it is because every human being has a season in your life, and not all leading to stay.
Yeah.
So I think what it may cost me though is maybe some. That's a really good question. I haven't really thought about it. It may cost me some time, like important time in spaces that I need to be more present. That's what it may cost me. But other than that, I don't think it costs me anything else.
Yeah. So many busy mother scholars really do struggle with guilt. They struggle with guilt for many reasons, but obviously one of those sometimes is the time that they've got to spend away from their kids or their family while they're studying, or whether they're, going to conferences or whatever. What advice would you offer about setting boundaries and managing the emotional aspects of scholarly motherhood?
So me and guilt have a very different relationship than most people. I don't feel guilty for a lot of things. Like guilt and shame don't enter into my vocabulary. And I think that's because I worked on mental rehab for so many years and I've watched how
Yeah.
guilt and shame has crippled people's capacity to love and live life on this
Mm.
earth. So I don't have a relationship with guilt. I don't have a good relationship with shame, right? I even done it. My son is always telling him that you can't embarrass me, embarrass yourself. But it won't be, it will never be me you are embarrassing, right? But I think we think too highly of ourselves in situations where people are not thinking about us.
Yeah.
And I think even in motherhood, if you've experienced teenagers, then second thought about you.
That's so
I
true.
think they take a break at about 13 to about 23, 24, their first job. And when they realize that, what this thing is, that's when they come back online. Like,
Yeah.
so, like, why am I losing sleep over somebody who, you know, has a harder ability to show me that, you know, they care? Like, I'm not losing sleep over that. I'm not. I'm going to go in my bed. I'm going to rest. I think one of the things as well too, because I never put my studies on a pedestal. It was
Yeah.
never something that I was fighting for somebody else's attention. It never competed with anybody else's attention. It didn't compete with my
Love
health.
that.
It didn't compete with my I think the only time it competed was towards the very right end when when you got to get all of that stuff turned in and
Yeah.
you're knee deep into the research and you're not seeing anything else. And I remember it took me almost 6 months to a year to get back into my rhythm of working out and all that stuff. But I also think that that's because it was during COVID as well too, and it wasn't a normal transition. So I can't say if it was really that or it was that my normal support system did not exist how it would have existed before.
I love also what you said about not putting the PhD on a pedestal. I think a lot of people do that,
Yes.
whether consciously or subconsciously, and not putting it on a pedestal just allows it to sit where it needs to sit in your life.
Yeah.
And not take over.
Exactly. And I think the more you know, the less you know. When you get a PhD,
Yeah.
you realize, like, listen, you're on top of the world, but you're on top of the world at the bottom of the totem pole.
I'm telling you.
There's so many more people above you who got years of experience doing sometimes what we think is the work. We think that our work is so spectacular, but I guarantee you, in like 3 or 4 years, you realize that everybody was doing the same thing. It was just a different language. Like,
so true.
you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm the person. No, you're not. Like, I firmly believe God gives a couple of people the ideas, and it depends on who's brave enough to move forward with it.
So true.
So
there's nothing new under the sun, right?
No, and even if it is new, it is the approach. It's you who bring a new value.
Yeah.
So for me, the PhD is not something that don't get me wrong. I love that I have a PhD. I love that when I walk in spaces that people do see me as an expert. I love that I can create innovative conversations because I am a researcher.
Yeah.
But I'm also more than just, Dr. J. And there's so many elements to me that other people don't get to see, which I'm okay with because it's actually none of the business.
Yeah, so true. So true. I love the idea of, embracing that multi-dimensional version of yourself because
absolutely.
We are not just our PhDs. We are not just our titles.
No.
And when I say we're not just our titles, that includes mom as well. We're not just that.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so much more to us.
Son's turning 18 and so happy. Let's go, but new version of me unlocked. Like, new version. I'm excited to meet that new version.
So as a marriage and family therapist, you help others navigate relationships and group dynamics. How did your academic knowledge translate into practical strategies for building systems, like support systems, as a scholarly mama?
Okay, so I love that question because there'll probably be some people who watch me like, did you have to marriage and family therapist? Like, yes, that's what my first master's is in.
Yeah.
but I always call it my major professional thing. Why did you call it maritime family theory? Why didn't we just call it systems theory? Because that's really what it is. So I take that role out of cybernetics or cybernetics, looking at the epistemology of knowledge and transference of systems. And I apply that to every single thing that I do. I no longer practice that side of couples therapy or marriage therapy. I think there was a part of me that when after my husband died, and I did it for a while because I developed the family program that I used to work before, that I kind of had a standstill of, okay, where do I go with the knowledge of couples work? And so I kind of paused that for a very long time. But what I've taken from that master's degree, really systems theory and how we help people navigate nonlinear ways of thinking. How do we help people to create space with understanding that everything that you do in life and every person that you have in life is an impact on your system and impact on your relationships. So I think that's very key, that information. And then the PhD really with the systemic studies really solidified that component of that everything is a system. And most people are not systemically trained. We talk about systems, but there are few of us in the world that actually understand cybernetics, epistemology of knowledge, paradox and counter paradox. There are not a lot of us that understand that language. And all of that is related to systems thinking and how do we build stronger systems and how we take away the causality of stuff and we decolonize the way how we view the world and actually decolonize pathology, all of that stuff. So that's where it came in.
So now that you've completed your PhD and are well into your post-PhD career, if you could sit down with yourself at the very beginning of your doctoral journey, what would you tell her about leading herself differently?
I would have probably said to get it done faster. Don't take the break. Well, the break was maybe not necessary. I would say complete it, get it done. I will also say to share the journey a little bit more because I don't think that I think I started to share my journey in 2019 after Cindy died. But before, I don't think many people knew other than I posted, well, hey, I get ready to do my. And there was literally non-existent. A lot of people didn't know I was on their PhD. So I would share the conversation a little bit more so people could be a little bit more knowledgeable about what I was studying, how it applies to the real world. Because I find myself, even with what I have and our name or our title with the PhD, having such not a hard time to explain to other people what I do, but always having to justify what it is that I do. But you do this, and I thought you studied this, and I think one of the most underrated experiences for a human being is to understand that your PhD title is not the only thing you do. Like there are a lot of courses that you took that will never come to light. That people are like, well, I didn't know that you would have studied that. Yes, because you see a title and you think that title, that's the only thing that people study in the title, but there's so much more information that people are learning. So I think that's what I would have done. That's what I would have told myself.
It's really interesting because I was having a conversation with someone recently. So I did my first degree in America, but I did all of the other degrees in the UK. And I was having a conversation about comparing the experiences of doing, my experience of doing the degree in America versus my experience of doing my degrees in the UK. And I was saying to them, even in my undergraduate degree, which was in biology and chemistry, I was doing all kind of things. I was doing Greek mythology. I was doing music history, psychology. I was doing so many other topics, botany, so many different topics. And I think that was, so when you mentioned about doing, because I know obviously you did your PhD in the US, you probably did lots of other subjects within that.
Yes. And that's where my fusion is. Like even my first degree is in psychology, but it's by default because I actually was studying to be an occupational therapist. But before that, I was studying to be a trainer. athletic trainer,
What?
and I was studying to be a strength coach. So if you look at my degree, I have so many credits for weightlifting and anatomy and physiology, like all like a lot of that
Wow.
stuff. So when people say but you do wellness and you do fitness, I thought you do mental health, like it's all connected with it. Like it's not separate. I did a lot of scaffolding in my studying. And
Yeah.
so when people see my CV, be like, well, you're a nutrition coach and you're a strength and conditioning coach and you did weightlifting, did gymnastics. And why would that apply? Now, here we are in 2026 where everybody jumping on bandwagon that mental health and physical health are integrated. It's always been. It's just that you've
Yeah.
never studied it. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know. Yes, it's always been. It's not new. It's new to
Yeah.
you. You
Yeah.
know.
But you've had I think your journey is so aligned with that thinking as well, because you've had the experience of being not just studying the physiology
Mhm.
and the training, but you've been an athlete yourself.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And I always tell people I was that athlete who the coaches would like, let her warm up her feet and let her do the one to do the pep talk. Like I was always thrusted into these roles. And then this when I get into a professional setting, now I'm like, how do we help people to integrate everything that they're learning? I think what knowledge does to us, it triples our capacity to integrate. So people often think that, if you are studying this in your PhD, you shouldn't come over to this site. And it's unfortunate because you carry all versions of you, and all versions of you are very knowledgeable or have to be knowledgeable. Look at, the whole PCOS to TMOD now. How much disservice that has done for people who did not understand what endocrine disruptors were or what their metabolic pathways were and how they were being treated because they didn't have the knowledge outside of what one singular approach to it was. Whereas there were other medical practitioners that were always screaming this because they had a holistic, integrated approach to care, not a
So important.
singular, and so I think that's one of the things that when we are choosing to be educated, to understand that you're not educated for just one area. There are multiple ways of seeing the world, and you got to go out there and explore in multiple ways.
Yeah. So going back to your pre-PhD self, is there anything that you would say to her that you would say you should just let go of that? Like, would you have let go of anything earlier?
No, because I think because at the beginning I said this is going to be the best time I'm going to enjoy my life the best. I bought a house the same year I started my PhD. I quit my job 2 years after I started my PhD. Like I
Wow.
was determined to live a full life as a result of utilizing the PhD for greater knowledge and greater position
Yeah.
knowledge. So there wouldn't be anything different that I would ask.
And even we haven't even touched on all of that, but that takes so much courage too, to say, actually, I'm going to walk away from things that are not serving me in this season of my life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
So in 2017, I was 2 years in my PhD, and I knew I was going to leave, but I didn't know I was going to leave in 2017. I think I had given myself to like 20 years. I was gonna, there was a particular revelation that happened within the business space. And I just said, I really can't be part of this. I had made a decision. And I always choose me before I choose anybody else. My son, my parents, it don't matter who it is. Grief teaches you that you do have to choose yourself before everybody else. So I had, I did just got one day and something happened within the workspace. And I just decided at that point, no, this space is not for me. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a clean effective plan. Even to the fact I always say, my mortgage, I didn't even say that, you are paying mortgage, well. So like 3 months in, the mortgage people say, you need to pay mortgage if you lose your house. So that kind of like what me like, okay, are there consequences to just randomly quitting your job? And maybe it's not as good idea, but I wouldn't regret it, but I just think it was necessary. I mean, and I think that's what getting a PhD or getting a master's, or even on a first degree teaches you, it offers you a larger structure of the world because you can become more viable. With a PhD, you could be a creator. Nobody has to give you permission to do anything. You can choose what you want, how you want, because you've reached a pinnacle in knowledge that you can share. So I think for me, it was definitely that. Just roll out, just figure it out, and here I am, almost 10 years later,
Wow.
figuring it out in a very good way.
I love that story. Love that. So, you do run this mental health consultancy
hmm
now, focus on prevention and innovation.
hmm
What does prevention look like for mother scholars specifically?
I do think you have a vision problem, meaning where people see themselves moving forward, especially when you are in a PhD journey.
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of moms put their PhD journey on a pedestal because they believe it's something that their children will value in the moment. Children really don't care about you got PhDs. Like,
No, they don't.
like it's only when they get older, and like I said, with the legacy that
Yeah.
lives on. But I think
Yeah.
more importantly, I think knowing when you need to get off of that hamster wheel and recognizing that the burnout no longer serves you because it does serve you initially. Don't get it twisted. When we are overwhelmed, when we can't manage anymore, when we are just fatigued, sometimes it is okay for us to sit in spaces where we feel as if, people have to come and rescue us, or we sit in these spaces where we feel as if we are not capable of doing anything more. We find this energy to push through and then we, bounce back and then we go back. So it's a cycle that we feel really empowered by. People may never want to own it,
Yeah.
but it is,
Yeah.
there is some truth behind empowering burnout. When we keep saying, I'm so tired, I'm so fatigued, it's all too burnt out. Like if you've heard that language enough, there will be something that will tell you you need to stop saying this. And I'll give a example of what it looked like for me without me being a burnout. So I remember when I was doing the lead coordinator job, so many people would say to me, "You look so tired." And I
Mm.
used to be like, "Well, I don't look tired. I feeling good, but my face physically looked tired." I remember one day just getting up and I said, I'm tired of this. There are people see me, I want them to say you look so beautiful. You like, and I changed wardrobe, I changed style, like I was tired of being seen as being tired. That was my biggest thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for PhD mamas, I think you have to be not okay with being burnt out and doing something about it. So I hate that phrase. It's okay to be not okay. I hate it because I'm like, where's the ending of it? It's okay to be not okay, but I'm doing something to change that outcome. We've almost
Yeah.
normalized
Yeah.
that. We've normalized that. It's okay to
Yeah.
admit, no, at some point in time, you gotta realize it is not okay to be not okay. And I need to do
Yeah.
something about it. So I think intervention is really important. And I don't think we recognize that we don't get back the time that we've lost to burn out. We
Yeah.
can create
Yeah.
better versions of us, but at the end of the day, if you are experiencing burnout from the ages of 33 to 45, that is 12 years that don't only impact your education journey, it's also impacting your physiology, it's impacting your mental, your
Yeah.
psychological state. It's also priming you for things like Alzheimer's and dementia that we don't talk about. It's also
Yeah.
creating space for you to invite diseases or diseases into your body. So the cost of burnout isn't as valuable as we make it. And
Yeah.
when we are younger and we are on this journey, we really have to do something new.
I really like how you focused on the kind of taking action
Mhm,
because I know so many people
mhm.
that will just say, "Oh,
Yep.
just so tired, so burnt out, just so burnt out."
Mhm.
But you don't see any
Yeah.
kind of change happening. You don't see any
Mhm.
action to seek support
Yeah.
or make decisions, to pull away, to pause, to do whatever you need to do to address that.
Yep.
And I like how you mentioned that there's so many, risks associated with this, putting yourselves at risk of all kinds of, not just mental health issues in the moment, but future diseases and things that we then wake up one day and wonder, where did that come from? So I think we really need to heed that warning of, if we are feeling like that, we are feeling this state of constant overwhelm and just capacity just isn't meeting demand, that we feel brave enough to do something about that and not just sit in the identity of I'm burnt out.
And we and that's a very good point. We have created a burnt out identity. How many books that are written on burnout that half the people who burnt out refuse to read it?
Yeah.
We have created the identity. And don't get me wrong, I know what it is to be tired, to be overwhelmed, to be frustrated, disappointed. But those are feelings that are designed to show us what next versions we need to give ourselves. Those aren't feelings to stay stuck in.
No. This has been so good. I have thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you and talking about your journey. So inspiring what you've managed to make out of these experiences that you have had, and to bring it all together into a really powerful, impactful, purposeful career. And it's been my absolute pleasure to talk to you on the show, to share your journey with all of my wonderful listeners. Can you tell us where we can follow you online?
So we are rootengineeringwellbeing.com. So that's REENGINEERING, wellbeing. So that's like the engineering. And then you can follow us on IG. You're on LinkedIn, the same Reengineering Wellbeing. And then Dr. Chase-Mayers on Instagram.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. And it's been my absolute pleasure to have you on Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy we got this done.
We finally did it, didn't we? We've been literally planning this forever.
I know. The time was found, but I really want to thank you, Michelle, for having this vision, because I don't think a lot of women have a space, and I'm not a big safe space person. I don't like language. I don't think a lot of people have a safe place to go and learn on their journey in specific areas. And I believe that this is, you're offering a different perspective on the PhD journey, because I think a lot of people have the actual perspective on the PhD journey, which often harms their capacity, that spirit harms their capacity to actually be the best version of themselves in their scholarship.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for listening. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, I want you to know this. You don't need to have it all figured out before you take your next step. This work is all about learning to lead yourself first in ways that honor your capacity, your work, your home, and yourself, without burning out in the process. If you'd like to continue the conversation beyond the podcast, you're warmly invited to join Scholarly Mamas The Letter, a quiet monthly newsletter for mother scholars who value purpose beyond titles, presence at home, and peace within. You can sign up at scholarlymamas.com. And if you're feeling stuck, stretched, or just not where you want to be, you can book a free 30-minute call to help you gain clarity and explore what support might look like in this season to get from where you are to where you want to be. You can also connect with me on social media at Mrs. Mummy PhD, where I share reflections on ambition, motherhood, sustainable self-leadership, all the things, for high-achieving mamas like yourself. This, mama, is the quiet work of scholarly motherhood, and these are our journeys of becoming.